Hello, this is Matthew with F3IT. Today we are on site at a customer. We are swapping out some hardware for them. So we're going to be putting in a new router and a couple of new access points, and then making sure that everything is still online after the switchover. So the first thing that we need to do is get this router over here and get it plugged into the modem and powered on, so that way it can start updating and making sure that it connects back to the POS dashboard that we are setting it up for today. So I do have this rack. I'm going to pull it out and see if I can find a spot for power for this router. Okay, I do see a surge protector down here that looks like has an open port on that. And then there's a spot further up here, right underneath their POS switch, that looks like it'll be perfect to slot this router in. So the easiest option may be to start on top, just getting that power supply up there, and then bringing the cable down. So that's plugged into power, and they do have the modem down here that we'll be plugging into. I may need to grab a longer cable for that. We'll try this one and see if this will get the job done. Let's see if that has to come all the way down here. That may be long enough. So actually what I'm going to do is plug this in on these routers. They have it marked where the internet port is. So I will plug that in there. Position it on this shelf here, and then slide this cable back. So again, I can route it down, which is typically a little easier to do than plugging it in at the bottom and having to pull it up. It's a little tight back here. Let's see if I can move this up a little more. Thankfully, there's a nice bit of extra length on this rack, so I don't have to worry about pulling anything out of the wall. But we are in the modem. Perfect. Okay, now that we have the internet plugged in, we can get the other end of this power cord plugged in. I like to make sure that the internet cable is plugged in first. That way, as this router comes online and connects to the dashboard and has to go through any updates, that internet cable is already in there. So that way we don't waste any time where it's trying to check for an update and there's no internet plugged in. All right, so now that we have that plugged in, the next thing we want to do, since this is a site visit for swapping out equipment, there is a switch up here labeled for the POS network, but we want to make sure that that is correct. So I already have a couple of little remotes plugged in on the other ends for some of these cables. And I am going to test them out here to make sure that those are accurate. Okay, so we have the bar cable, and that bar cable is actually failing this test with my remote on the other side. So we need to note that. And that is something we may need to re-terminate. And then as we're going through, I'm just going to make labels for these cables. Okay, that turns back nothing. So that leads me to believe that host cable is inaccurately labeled, and it may be one of these other And yes, so it is this one. ID number 2, that was the host, and that one passes. So this cable is good. And I'll just take off this old label because that doesn't seem to be accurate. And I will label this new cable. Actually, I'm going to change that to say host RP, just so it's more clear that that's the receipt printer up there. Private dining room. Should be this one, if that label is correct as well. Dining room server, yep. Also known as the barrel, so I'll put it as a barrel. And then now I did put one in for the Expo printer. But I may need to go back and just tone those out now that I have the receipt printers labeled. But another thing we can do, if you look and see anything plugged in that doesn't have any data going to it currently, that's an indication that it is either a port that's not being used, or that could be our remote that's been plugged in. So since I'm here, I'm just going to quickly check all of these. Okay, it may be more conducive, especially once I get all the other remotes on those kitchen printers. Maybe best to come back to that later. But we have all of the POS equipment, all the receipt printers have been traced and toned out. So now that we have done that, I think my next line of action is going to be redoing the termination for that bar cable, since that did fail our test. So something else I did notice as I was going through and checking their network at this site here is they have a switch under here that gets an uplink cable for the network, and then these extra ports are able to give extra ports for the devices to connect to. So they have a cable that's going to each of these 2 printers that are up here. But what I did notice is there's also this blue cable, and if we follow this cable, we can see both of these ends are plugged into this same switch, and that is causing what's known as a network loop, which is pretty self-explanatory. When you have part of the network that loops around and connects back into itself. In this instance, this is a case where the same switch has the same cable connected to it, and that can cause a lot of issues with the network. So we are definitely going to remove this network loop, and that should also help alleviate some of the issues they've been experiencing with orders taking a while to fire back, because this loop was likely causing havoc on the network. So this is a good find that we spotted this. That way we can remove that network loop and make sure that everything is just direct connections to devices, and the network isn't connected back into itself unnecessarily, causing issues. We're back here at the network rack, and that bar cable that previously had terminated poorly, before we go through all the steps of re-terminating that, I ended up just switching the patch cables out on both ends. And so we have this bar cable in here. And so now when I test it, it's passing. So this indicates that the cable on the other side maybe just got dirty, wet, whatever, being behind a bar. And so that's a good thing to check first before we go through the process of terminating the cables again, is seeing if maybe the issue is just that patch cable that's connecting the switch to the wall. So that way we don't have to go back there and do any unnecessary work if that cable running from the patch panel over to the bar is actually fine. And so just swapping out the patch cables is much easier of a job, and it seems like that's actually the issue here, so that is what we will go forward doing. And then I also had that server station, looks like this is labeled SS1, so we can test this cable as well. and that is also passing. So that is perfect. Okay, and it does look like the Meraki here is online, which is perfect. And now we can make this a little neater. Run this cable back here because this is going to be our uplink for their POS switch that's coming from that new Meraki router. Okay, and there's a cable here labeled for a bar AP. Perfect, because that is one of the devices we're here to replace. So I know that that is there, so that way we can check on that later. So we're on site here, and I was testing both of these ports for a kitchen printer back here, and neither of them were passing. So what I'm going to do now is go through the process of re-terminating these two keystones. Right. So, flathead. It's a great tool to have on site. Screwdriver that has a bunch of different heads you can put on it. So the flathead. I set up here so that doesn't fall. Don't want to lose that. Okay, and that's a Phillips head. Keeping those on. If any more give? No, this is all we're gonna get. Okay. Go in there with the flathead. Get those out. So we'll save this wall plate. Now we have our two ends here. So I'll just start with one first. Need some wire cutters, strippers, and then punch down tool. Get all that prepared. So let's just do one first. Stripped the jacket off the cabling. Perfect. And now we just need to separate these out. Okay, and this cable has a plastic bit in the middle as well. So we're going to also get rid of that. And then, depending on what keystones you're using, the setup may be a little different. But for the ones I'm using here, they also come with a little diagram on the side, so you know what cables need to go where. So we're using the V format, so we just have to match each side up appropriately. So the first thing we'll do is get the orange and green pairs untwisted next to each other. And then we'll do the same thing for the brown and the blue. Getting all the pairs ready to go. Perfect. So now I can slide the little keystone here into my device, and so that'll keep that nice and stable as I'm attempting to place these where they need to go. So I like to kind of line them up to where they're going to be. And I'll punch one side in. That brown one didn't want to go in all the way, so we'll just do that again. There we go. So we have one side in, now we'll work on the other. Double checking. This one might need to get punched down a little more just to make sure it's good and set. Wonderful. Okay, so that looks good. I have my cable tester here just so we can check and confirm. Okay, and so we're good there. So now I can work on getting this other one up. We'll just put the little tips on this guy. Get rid of these extra bits. Perfect, so we have that one. Now move on to the second cable.